I won't waste the rest of my life marrying a man who's comatose. Even if he belongs to a wealthy family, I refuse. Lillian Windsor's shrill voice rang across the Windsor estate like a slap. She tossed the embroidered veil onto the floor, her manicured nails trembling in outrage. Clarissa stood in the doorway, half hidden in the shadows. As usual, she wasn't invited into the conversation. She was the unwanted twin, the extra mouth the Windsors had taken in out of obligation. But even from there, her heart thudded at Lillian's words. The Cromwell family. The Synergy conglomerate. A marriage alliance powerful enough to resurrect the dying Windsor name. And yet, Lillian was running from it. Lillian, their adoptive mother, Mrs. Windsor, pressed a hand to her chest, struggling to breathe. This marriage is the only way to restore our family's standing. Magnus Cromwell may be comatose, but he is still the heir. Do you think you can simply refuse? I'm not chaining myself to a corpse. Lillian snapped. Clarissa flinched. For once, she wanted to remind her twin that the man wasn't dead, only lost in the abyss of unconsciousness. But no one would listen. Mrs. Windsor's voice cracked. The Cromwells only agreed to overlook our past scandals because of this union. If we fail them now, we are finished. She broke off, clutching her chest harder. Mother? Clarissa rushed forward, panic clawing her throat. She could see the strain etched on the older woman's pale face, the tightness in her breaths. Mrs. Windsor's eyes slid toward her, pleading, desperate. And then the words fell, heavy as chains. Clarissa. You'll go in Lillian's place. The world tilted. Me? Clarissa whispered, almost choking on the absurdity. I'm not. You look the same. You sound the same. If you keep quiet, no one will notice. Mrs. Windsor grabbed her wrist with surprising force. Think of me. I need the surgery. The hospital won't hold my place on the list without money. Do this, for me. Clarissa's mouth went dry. A substitute bride? A lie so enormous it could destroy her the moment it was exposed. And yet, what choice did she have? Lillian crossed her arms with a smirk. Perfect. Let her go. She's been dying for scraps of attention her whole life. Now she can have the honor of being chained to a vegetable. Clarissa's cheeks burned, but she didn't answer. She simply lowered her gaze. For once, her silence wasn't surrender, it was resignation. The wedding felt less like a celebration and more like a funeral. The Cromwell estate was lavish, filled with gilded chandeliers and watchful eyes. Clarissa kept her veil low, her palms clammy inside the silk gloves. Every step toward the man lying motionless in the wheelchair at the altar only deepened the hollowness in her chest. Magnus Cromwell. He looked almost sculpted, his sharp features cruelly perfect even in stillness. His dark lashes cast shadows across high cheekbones, lips pale yet firm. He looked asleep, peaceful. Except this was no fairy tale sleep to be broken by a kiss. Her vows trembled out of her like smoke. She told herself this was just a job. A role. She wasn't Clarissa anymore. She was Lillian Windsor, bride of the Cromwells. When the ceremony ended, the family's polite claps echoed like nails on a coffin lid. The bridal chamber was a cavernous room, cold with silence. Clarissa perched on the edge of the bed, staring at the man lying still in the massive canopy bed. Her new husband. She exhaled, a nervous laugh slipping out. Well. Here we are. You, asleep. Me, pretending to be someone I'm not. A match made in, somewhere. The words sounded ridiculous, but saying them eased the suffocating tension. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You know, you could at least open one eye. Make this less awkward. No response. Only the steady rhythm of the machine monitoring his vitals. Clarissa sighed, standing to pace the room. Don't worry, I won't bother you much. I'll just talk, I guess. Better than staring at the ceiling all night. Her words grew bolder with each step. Honestly, you're kind of intimidating. I mean, look at you. Even unconscious, you look like you'd fire me for breathing too loud. She stopped, cheeks heating. Not that I work for you. Technically, I guess I do. Husband. Whatever. Clarissa groaned, covering her face. Great. First night married and I'm already talking to a block of wood. This is my life now. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that somewhere deep inside the abyss, Magnus Cromwell heard her. Her voice, warm and laced with sarcasm, brushed against the darkness like sunlight seeping through a crack. And for the first time in endless, suffocating months, he wanted to follow it. The first month nearly broke her. Clarissa had imagined that pretending to be Lillian would be simple: sit in silence, nod at the Cromwell's questions, fulfill her duties as the dutiful wife to a man who would never wake. But reality gnawed at her patience day and night. Every morning, she rose before dawn to check Magnus' vitals with the nurses. She learned to sponge his body when no one else was around, her hands clumsy and awkward against muscles that still felt alive under her fingertips. She trimmed his nails, combed his hair, even changed the sheets when the maids looked at her with disdain. Such devotion, she once overheard one of them whisper to another. No wonder the old master favors her. Devotion. If only they knew. She wasn't here for love. She was here because her adoptive mother's life depended on it. Still, the Cromwell family's suspicion was constant. Mrs. Cromwell, elegant and cold as winter, never smiled at her. Uncles and cousins kept their distance, whispering about whether her auspicious birth would truly bring their heir luck. Clarissa bore it with gritted teeth. The Windsor family had always treated her as a shadow, what was one more year in another cage. But there were nights when the silence pressed too hard, and she found herself talking to the comatose man on the bed. She sat by his side, knees tucked under her, staring at his unmoving profile. Do you know you snore? She whispered one night, stifling a laugh. Not loud. Just this little sound. Like you're reminding me you're still alive. Another night, she groaned after spilling tea on her dress. Look what you've reduced me to. Talking to a statue while I ruin perfectly good silk. Her sarcasm, her unfiltered complaints, became routine. She didn't realize that Magnus could hear every word, each sound pulling him closer from the abyss. As weeks turned into months, she became bolder. One morning, while adjusting the collar of his nightshirt, she muttered, "You know, if you were awake, I'd probably hate you. You'd be one of those rich men who think women are accessories. But right now, you're the perfect husband. Quiet. Doesn't argue. Just stares." She froze, mortified by her own words, then burst into muffled laughter. Listen to me. Losing my mind already. What she didn't see was the faint twitch of his fingers. The Cromwell patriarch, Master Gerald, began to soften toward her. You've taken your vows seriously, child, he told her one afternoon as she helped Magnus with his physical therapy stretches. His tone was gruff, but his gaze carried approval. Few brides would endure this. Clarissa bowed her head, masking the guilt clawing inside her. He thought she was Lillian. The real Windsor daughter. If the truth ever came out, the respect she'd gained would shatter instantly. She kept reminding herself, this is temporary. But temporary stretched into a year. She knew the layout of the Cromwell estate better than the Windsor's mansion. She knew how Magnus' hand curled slightly when she rubbed his palm, how his brows twitched when she scolded him for scaring her with his silence. You hear me, don't you? She whispered one rainy night, resting her forehead against the bedrail. Somewhere in there. You just don't want to wake up. Can't say I blame you. Her voice cracked. She quickly forced a laugh to cover it. Don't you dare make me the crazy widow talking to thin air. If you're going to stay like this, at least, blink or something. Give me a sign. A faint sigh escaped him, as if he wanted to answer. Clarissa sat up straight, heart hammering. No way. She shook her head, chuckling nervously. I'm imagining things. The Cromwell family grew used to her presence, their hostility mellowing into acceptance. Clarissa, the substitute, the lie, had become indispensable. And yet, every night she reminded herself, this isn't real. I'm not his wife. I'm not Lillian. When he wakes, if he wakes, everything ends. But a secret part of her heart hoped he never opened his eyes. Because the moment he did, she would lose the only place she had ever been treated like she mattered. Far beneath the darkness, Magnus fought to rise. Her voice was his tether. Her laughter, her warmth, her frustrated little rants, each one was a torch guiding him back. He had no face to attach to that voice, no memories beyond the veil of sleep. But he clung to her anyway. The day he finally opened his eyes, he decided, he would never let her go. The day began like any other, rain tapping at the window, the smell of antiseptic lingering in the air. Clarissa sat cross-legged by the bed, flipping through a worn-out romance novel she had stolen from the library. She wasn't really reading, the words blurred together. With a sigh, she glanced at the man stretched out beside her, still and silent as ever. You know, she said, closing the book with a snap, this heroine is pathetic. She keeps crying because the Duke hasn't noticed her. If you were awake, you'd probably be the same. Arrogant, dismissive, thinking you're some kind of gift from heaven. Her lips twisted in a wry smile. Lucky for me, you're asleep. You can't argue. She leaned closer, whispering conspiratorially, but if you were awake, I'd probably slap you for being so handsome and so useless at the same time. She laughed at her own nonsense, shook her head, and reached for the basin of water to wipe his face. That was when it happened. His fingers twitched. Clarissa froze, rag dripping water onto the floor. Her gaze shot to his hand, then to his face. His brows furrowed slightly, the faintest crease breaking his perfect stillness. Magnus? Her voice cracked. No, don't joke like this. I must be sleep-deprived. But then his eyes opened. Slowly. Heavy-lidded. Dark as storm clouds. Clarissa's breath caught in her throat. For a year she had looked at his closed lids, memorized the shape of his lashes, the slope of his nose. Now those eyes, alive, sharp, piercing, were looking back at her. Wah, her knees nearly gave out. You're awake? His lips parted, voice hoarse from disuse, but steady. So. I'm not a block of wood after all. Clarissa choked on air. Heat shot to her face. Why, you heard that? One corner of his mouth lifted, barely, but unmistakably. A smirk. Every word. Her mortification was instant and complete. Of all the things she had said over the past year, complaints, sarcasm, confession spoken into the dark, he had heard? Kill me now, she muttered, pressing both palms to her face. His voice, weak but laced with amusement, cut through her fingers. Tempting offer. But I think I'll keep you around. Clarissa peeked through her fingers, glaring. Don't get cocky just because you woke up. You've been dead weight for 12 months. He chuckled, and the sound, low, rough, alive, sent a shiver down her spine. The door burst open before she could regain composure. Magnus. The Cromwells flooded the room, his parents, uncles, even the servants. Gasps filled the chamber as they beheld their heir awake, sitting up with Clarissa hovering at his side like a startled deer. Mrs. Cromwell wept openly, clutching her husband's arm. The patriarch, Master Gerald, stared at Magnus with pride and relief. You've returned to us, he said, voice shaking. Clarissa stepped back, trying to make herself invisible in the sudden storm of affection and authority. She reminded herself, this was the end of her role. He was awake. Her job was finished. Soon, she would be cast aside. Clarissa, Master Gerald's voice pulled her out of her spiraling thoughts. He gave her a rare nod. You've done well. From this point on, you may leave the rest to your sister. The word stabbed sharper than she expected. Leave. Sister. The lie loomed heavier now that Magnus' gaze was fixed on her, intense and unwavering. Later, when the crowd finally dispersed, Clarissa lingered awkwardly at the door. She needed to slip away, quietly, before questions began. But his voice stopped her. "You," Magnus rasped. Her head snapped toward him. He looked stronger already, though his body was clearly weakened. His eyes pinned her in place. "Come here." She hesitated, heart pounding. "You should rest." "Come here." His command carried no room for refusal. Reluctantly, she stepped closer. Magnus reached out, his hand surprisingly steady, and caught hers. His palm was warm, real. Alive. "Your voice," he murmured, thumb brushing across her knuckles. I followed it back. "Don't think you can just disappear now." Clarissa's throat went dry. His gaze burned with something she couldn't decipher, possession, maybe. Or gratitude. Or both. She tugged lightly, but he didn't release her. "You're heavy-handed for a man who just woke up," she muttered, trying to mask her fluster. A faint smile touched his lips. "You nag like my wife. You must be her." The irony sliced her chest open. She wasn't his wife. Not really. And when Lillian returned, the truth would crush everything. But for now, Magnus Cromwell was awake. And he wasn't letting go. The news spread like wildfire. Magnus Cromwell, heir of Synergy conglomerate, had awakened after a year in a coma. The Cromwell estate, once hushed with grief and formality, now bustled with visitors, relatives, and business partners desperate to congratulate the family. For Clarissa, it felt like walking a tightrope on fire. Every glance lingered too long, every whispered conversation made her stomach knot. She'd managed to survive pretending for a year. But now that Magnus was awake, how long before the lie unraveled? Her answer came sooner than expected. Lillian arrived 2 days later, draped in an expensive designer coat, lips painted a sharp crimson. She swept into the Cromwell drawing room with the air of a queen returning to her throne. "Magnus," she gasped, clasping her hands dramatically. "You're awake." "Thank heavens." Clarissa, standing in the corner, stiffened. She wasn't supposed to be here. She had been told to rest, but she couldn't stop herself from watching. Magnus' eyes narrowed slightly as he studied Lillian. There was polite recognition, but no warmth. "I see," he said slowly. His voice was stronger now, smoother. "So this is my wife?" The Cromwells nodded eagerly, relief on their faces. Clarissa's breath caught. Her nails dug into her palms. Lillian wasted no time rushing forward, seizing Magnus' hand with both of hers. "Of course it's me. Who else could it be?" Magnus tilted his head, his gaze flicking briefly toward Clarissa before returning to Lillian. Who else, indeed? There was no smile on his lips. Only calculation. Later, when the guests had dispersed, Clarissa tried to slink away toward the servants' wing. She needed distance, time, anything to untangle her pounding heart. But a hand shot out, catching her wrist as she turned a corner. Magnus. He leaned against the wall, cane in one hand, balance still fragile but presence sharp as steel. His eyes locked on her, far too clear, far too knowing. "Going somewhere?" he asked, voice deceptively light. Clarissa swallowed hard. "Why, you should be resting. You only just woke up. Don't dodge." He stepped closer, his height shadowing her. "Tell me. Who are you really?" Her pulse thundered in her ears. She forced a weak laugh. "I'm Lillian, of course." "You're..." "Lies." His grip tightened just enough to stop her from slipping away. His eyes bore into hers, unyielding. "The woman who sat by my side for a year, she's not the same one who just paraded in here wearing lipstick and perfume." Clarissa froze. His words sliced clean through the fragile mask she clung to. Magnus leaned in, his breath brushing her ear. "The one who nagged me, scolded me, laughed at me, that was you." Her knees nearly buckled. Heat crawled up her neck, not just from fear but from how low and intimate his voice had grown. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, attempting to wrench her wrist free. Magnus smirked faintly. Then why are you trembling? She glared up at him, cheeks burning. Because you're standing too close. For the first time in days, a chuckle slipped from his throat. It was low, husky, infuriatingly amused. Ah. So you do have fire. Their tension carried into the family dinner that evening. Clarissa tried to keep her head down, to play the invisible role again. Lillian, meanwhile, clung to Magnus' arm like ivy. You mustn't overexert yourself, darling, Lillian cooed, dabbing at his mouth with a napkin even though there was nothing there. You've been through so much. Clarissa rolled her eyes before she could stop herself. Unfortunately, Magnus caught the gesture. His lips curved ever so slightly. He deliberately picked up his glass of water, then turned to Clarissa. Wife. Be a dear and pour me more. Clarissa nearly choked. Every eye turned toward her. Heat prickled at the back of her neck as she reached for the pitcher with trembling hands. Lillian's smile froze, brittle and sharp. Darling, I'll do it. No, Magnus said smoothly, eyes never leaving Clarissa's face. She will. Clarissa nearly spilled the entire jug in her panic. Magnus' fingers brushed hers when he took the glass, lingering longer than necessary. His gaze smoldered, almost daring her to deny him. Clarissa wanted to crawl under the table. That night, she cornered him in the corridor, fury outweighing fear. What was that? She hissed. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're making things worse for me. Magnus arched a brow, his cane tapping lightly on the floor. Worse for you? I thought I was making things clearer. Clearer? She repeated, incredulous. He leaned closer, his smirk infuriatingly confident. I know what's real, Clarissa. And I don't intend to let you keep hiding behind another woman's name. Her heart lurched. He said her name, her true name, for the first time. And no matter how desperately she wanted to deny it, the part of her that had longed to be seen, couldn't breathe. Magnus Cromwell was supposed to be weak. He had just clawed his way back from a coma. Everyone expected him to spend weeks in bed, relearning how to walk, eat, and breathe like a normal man. But Magnus had other plans. Clarissa, he said one morning, cane tapping against the marble floor, you're going to help me with rehabilitation. Clarissa blinked at him from the sofa where she had been mending one of his shirts. Me? Shouldn't you have professional therapists? People who actually know what they're doing? I prefer you, he replied without hesitation. Her needle nearly pricked her finger. She frowned, suspicious. Why? Magnus' lips curved faintly. Because I trust you. And because you're very motivating. Her stomach nodded. Motivating? That tone of voice was dangerous. The first session began in the garden. The Cromwell estate grounds stretched endlessly, hedges and fountains lined like soldiers, roses blooming even in the early chill. Take my arm, Magnus ordered, extending his elbow. Clarissa hesitated. I don't think. Do it. His gaze was steel. Muttering under her breath, she slipped her hand through the crook of his arm. His muscles, though weakened, still felt solid under her touch. Heat shot up her arm before she could stop it. They took slow steps across the gravel path. Clarissa focused on the ground, trying not to trip, but Magnus' attention never wavered from her. You walked me for a year in my sleep, he murmured. Don't pretend you can't handle me awake. She stumbled. He caught her, steady despite the cane, lips twitching at her glare. Smug bastard, she muttered. His chuckle followed her like a tease. Now you're honest. I like that. Over the next days, his rehabilitation grew increasingly suspicious. Clarissa, he called one afternoon, seated at the piano in the parlor. Stretch my fingers. She blinked. Stretch your, what? He held up his hand, palm out. Massage them. They feel stiff. You have staff for that, she snapped. I want you. Clarissa groaned but took his hand, pressing her thumbs into his palm. She realized too late how intimate it felt, his skin warm, his eyes fixed solely on her. You're good at this, he said, voice low. Shut up, she muttered, cheeks heating. A faint smirk curved his lips. Make me. Her jaw dropped. You. His laugh was soft, but it carried a weight that made her pulse quicken. By the end of the week, she was certain Magnus was doing this on purpose. During one walking session, he suddenly stumbled. Clarissa panicked, throwing her arms around him to steady him. But instead of falling, he straightened, smug as ever, his arms tightening around her waist. You caught me, he said smoothly, his lips close to her ear. Her heart thundered. She shoved at his chest, mortified. You weren't even falling, were you? Of course I was. His smirk was criminal. Falling for you. Clarissa's brain short-circuited. Her cheeks burned so hot she thought steam might rise. I hate you, she hissed, spinning on her heel. His chuckle followed her down the path. No, you don't. But beneath the banter, Clarissa's guilt festered. Every time he looked at her like she was the only person in the world, she remembered the truth, she wasn't his wife. Not really. She was a substitute, a fraud. At night, lying awake in her chamber, she replayed his words, his touches, his infuriating smirks. Her heart betrayed her over and over. She couldn't stop herself from wanting more. Lillian noticed. She barged into Clarissa's room one evening, fury in every line of her painted face. What do you think you're doing? Clarissa stood, startled, a book slipping from her hands. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Magnus. He's supposed to be mine. But instead of stepping back like you should, you're clinging to him like some desperate parasite. Clarissa's jaw tightened. I've done everything you asked. I took your place. I cared for him when you refused. Don't you dare. You think that makes you special? Lillian sneered. You're nothing but a shadow. Once I expose you, the Cromwells will throw you out like trash. And then what? Back to being the unwanted orphan. Her words cut sharper than knives, but Clarissa forced her chin up. Maybe. But at least I didn't abandon him when he needed someone. Lillian's eyes blazed. You'll regret this. She stormed out, leaving Clarissa trembling. The next morning, Clarissa entered the dining hall to find Magnus waiting for her, leaning casually on his cane. His gaze slid over her, lingering, as if he already knew about Lillian's visit. You look troubled, he said. She forced a smile. I'm fine. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek so suddenly she froze. You're terrible at lying, he murmured. But don't worry. I'll drag the truth out of you eventually. Her breath caught, heart hammering. His touch burned like fire, and though every nerve screamed at her to pull back, she couldn't move. Magnus smirked, satisfied. And when I do, don't think I'll let you go. The Cromwell ballroom gleamed with gold and crystal. Chandeliers glittered overhead, violins hummed in the background, and the air crackled with the tension of nobles waiting for gossip to erupt. Tonight was supposed to celebrate Magnus Cromwell's return from the brink of death. But Clarissa felt the walls closing in. She knew Lillian. She knew her stepsister wouldn't let this night end without blood. Smile, Magnus murmured at her side, his hand warm at the small of her back. Everyone's staring. Let them envy. Clarissa tried, lips trembling into something that resembled a smile. Magnus caught the faint shake of her hands but said nothing. He only drew her closer, steady as an anchor. Then the doors opened. Lillian swept in, clad in a gown of crimson silk that seemed to bleed against the marble floor. Her beauty was dazzling, venom hidden beneath the gloss. And when her eyes found Clarissa, sharp, triumphant, Clarissa's stomach dropped. Here it comes. The orchestra slowed. Conversation faltered. Lillian strode to the center of the hall, her voice carrying like a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen," she declared, "I can't stay silent another moment. This celebration is built on a lie." The crowd gasped. Clarissa's blood turned to ice. Magnus' grip on her tightened. "Lillian," he said coolly, cane tapping once against the floor. "Choose your words carefully." But Lillian only smiled, sweet as poison. "Everyone believes that she flung her hand toward Clarissa, is the loyal wife who nursed you through your coma. But the truth? She's not Clarissa Cromwell. She's Clarissa Harland, an orphan with no title, no claim, no right to stand by your side." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Nobles whispered like a wave crashing on stone. Clarissa's knees threatened to buckle. The truth, laid bare in front of hundreds. Magnus didn't move. His eyes, however, sharpened like drawn steel. "Go on," he said. Lillian's smile widened. "She tricked you. She played the devoted wife while your real fiancé lived in the shadows. And she thought she could steal your affection. But she's nothing more than a substitute." Clarissa's throat closed. Her hands trembled at her sides. She wanted to deny it, but her lips wouldn't move. The shame was too heavy. Magnus finally turned to her. "Is it true?" The room hushed to a silence so deep even the violin stilled. Clarissa swallowed hard, forcing her voice past the lump in her throat. "Yes." A collective gasp echoed. Her chest ached, but she straightened her spine. "I was never your wife. Lillian asked me to take her place. Her voice cracked. "I never meant for it to go this far." The crowd erupted into scandalized murmurs. Lillian basked in it, radiant in victory. "There," she cried. "You see? She admits it herself. She's a liar, a thief. Cast her out before she drags your name into the gutter." Clarissa expected Magnus to recoil. To step away. To look at her with the same disgust she saw in every pair of eyes surrounding them. Instead, he laughed. A sharp, low sound that cut through the room like a blade. The ballroom froze. "Is that all?" Magnus asked, voice dripping disdain. "That's your grand revelation?" Lillian faltered. "Why, you don't understand. She deceived you. She saved me." His words rang like thunder. "When you abandoned me, she stayed. When you chose your vanity over duty, she chose to feed me, bathe me, speak to me as though I mattered. Deception or not, tell me, Lillian, which of you deserves to stand here?" Lillian's face drained of color. Magnus' cane slammed once against the floor. "Listen well, all of you. She may not carry my name by law, but she carries my loyalty by choice. And that's worth more than every forged marriage contract in this empire." Clarissa's breath hitched. Her eyes stung, and she hated herself for it, hated how much those words wrapped around her wounded heart. The crowd shifted uneasily, whispers now turning in her favor. Some even nodded, impressed by Magnus' declaration. Lillian's composure cracked. "You're defending her? After everything? She's a fraud." No, Magnus' voice was calm, final. His gaze locked on Clarissa's trembling form. "She's mine." The ballroom buzzed, nobles scrambling to reinterpret the scandal into romance. But Clarissa couldn't breathe. She turned sharply, skirts swishing, and fled down the hall. Her chest heaved as she pressed a hand against the cold stone wall, shame and relief crashing over her in waves. Footsteps followed. She didn't need to look to know who it was. "Clarissa." Magnus' voice was softer now, closer. "Don't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You shouldn't have defended me. They're right. I lied. I don't deserve." His hand caught her chin, tilting her face up. His eyes burned into hers, fierce and unyielding. "You think I care about titles? About names on paper?" His thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away a tear she hadn't noticed. "The only thing that matters is that you stayed. You. Not her. Her lips trembled. Her heart screamed for him, but guilt chained her in place. I can't, she whispered. Magnus leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. You already have. Her knees weakened. For a moment, she almost surrendered, almost let herself fall into him. But before she could speak, voices echoed down the hall, nobles searching, gossiping, closing in. Clarissa pulled away, heart-shattering. You'll regret this, she whispered, and fled before he could stop her. Magnus watched her go, jaw tight, eyes blazing with something dangerous. No, he muttered. You're the only thing I'll never regret. Clarissa stood at the edge of the Cromwell estate, the night air biting her skin as she clutched a small bag to her chest. She hadn't packed much, just enough to disappear. The carriage waited. One word and she could vanish. Her heart clenched as she looked back at the mansion glowing behind her. She had lived here for a year, pretending to be someone she wasn't, loving someone she shouldn't. Now it was time to cut the last thread. Running away again? The deep voice froze her. Magnus stood by the gates, tall despite the cane, his presence filling the night like a storm rolling in. The moonlight carved his face into shadows and sharp lines. He wasn't asking. He already knew. Clarissa tightened her grip on her bag. Don't try to stop me. He stepped forward, slow but steady, every tap of his cane echoing in her bones. I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to drag you back if you're foolish enough to leave. Her chest burned. You don't understand. Lillian was right. I deceived you, your family, everyone. Everything between us is built on a lie. Magnus' eyes narrowed, glinting with something fierce. A lie? He stopped just before her, towering close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. Then tell me this, was it a lie when you fed me with your own hands? When you scolded me for being too proud to die? When your voice pulled me back from the edge every single night? Clarissa's throat constricted. She shook her head, tears threatening. That wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was just part of the job. Magnus' hand shot out, snatching the bag from her. He tossed it aside, the contents spilling across the dirt. Look me in the eye, he ordered. His tone cut through her defenses like a blade. She tried, but the intensity of his gaze made her flinch. Say it again. Say it meant nothing. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She couldn't force the lie out, not with him looking at her like that, like she was the only thing that had ever mattered. Magnus' jaw tightened. Exactly what I thought. Before she could move, his arm circled her waist, yanking her against his chest. The cane clattered to the ground, forgotten, as he crushed her closer. Magnus. Her protest melted into a gasp as his lips hovered dangerously close. I nearly lost everything, he growled, voice low and rough. And when I opened my eyes, the only thing I saw was you. Do you think I'd let you walk away now? Clarissa's heart thundered. His words slammed into the walls she'd built around herself, breaking them apart piece by piece. I'm not her, she whispered, trembling. I'm not Lillian. I'm not the wife you were promised. I don't belong in your world. Magnus' lips brushed her temple, slow and deliberate. You're wrong. You belong in my world because I say so. Because I've already chosen you. Her knees buckled, tears spilling freely now. Why? Why would you choose someone like me? His hand slid up her back, fingers tangling in her hair as he pulled her head back just enough to meet her eyes. His gaze was fire and steel. Because when I was nothing more than a broken man in a bed, you were the only one who saw me as human. And because, his voice dropped to a whisper, every word searing her soul. I've already fallen for you. Clarissa's breath caught. The world spun, the night hushed, and for a heartbeat, nothing existed but his confession. She opened her mouth to speak, but Magnus didn't give her the chance. His lips claimed hers, fierce and consuming, stealing the air from her lungs and the doubts from her heart. Her hands, traitorous and desperate, clutched his shoulders, clinging to him as though she'd drown otherwise. The kiss was everything: anger, longing, relief, and a promise he refused to let her ignore. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against hers, his breath ragged. "You can keep running," he whispered, "but I'll always find you. And when I do, I'll kiss you again until you finally admit you're mine." Clarissa trembled, her chest aching with the war between guilt and the undeniable truth. She should push him away. She should leave. But she didn't. Her lips quivered into the faintest, broken smile. "You're insufferable." Magnus smirked, eyes gleaming with victory. "And you're terrible at lying." For the first time in years, Clarissa felt the weight lift, just a little. Maybe the road ahead was still jagged with scandal and doubt. But right now, wrapped in his arms, she wasn't the substitute bride, or the deceiver, or the discarded twin. She was simply his. And he wasn't letting go.